Welcome to the Line Before podcast. Me and Tracy. How are you doing tonight, Tracy?
Doing well. Good to be here. Good to be here.
I'll let you introduce our guest, a good friend of yours.
A good friend of mine, Joe Atkins, who we've known each other for quite some time. We worked together. We did podcasts together. We've been all over the country together. We've been like 25 years, Joe, 26 years.
Every bit. I think we met in what 98, something like that.
That sounds about right. So, yeah, about 20, 24, 25 years. So, yeah,
That's when I was born, man.
no kidding. Shut up, man.
Makes me feel
So,
old.
but yeah, no joke. But yeah, Joe and I, we used to ghost hunt together. We've been on a few of those little expeditions quite a bit. But uh, this venture started. I don't know how far back. 2015, Joe. Is that when the podcast started?
Mm,
20.
no, it's been over 10 years ago, 11 years
So
ago.
yeah, I mean, we kind of. This was before podcast really started getting popular. And we got hooked up with the folks over at Paramania Radio, and it kind of took off on us there for a little bit, and had a lot of fun. But
Right. Yeah,
it,
we did that, what, like 5 years, something like that.
yeah, off and on, yeah. But there at one time we were doing it, pretty regular. It was pretty heavy. We was getting there about the middle ways we started doing the Seton House, where we were starting to broadcast live from the Seton House over in Ashland, Kentucky. And man, I've got some stories for that place.
What kind of experiences did both of you have there?
Well, I had several, and I think we talked about one of them last time we were together. And I'm not going to mention anything because I haven't talked to Joe about any of this. We literally just put this together 10 seconds ago. What was the big thing, Joe, that was what freaked me out more than anything?
Well, there was a couple of things. They had the they had the white room upstairs, and then down in the basement where they did the seances, they had that. It was like an Indian down there.
Yeah, but there was one specific thing that jumped up in my face.
I remember the story, kind of, sort of. I don't
The
remember.
white face.
Oh yeah, that was over in that corner where that fuel barrel was at.
Yes. Yes, when it
I
jumped up
remember.
right in my face two or three times. So yeah, it was that was probably one of the things that freaked me out more than anything at that place. Of course, anytime we were there, something always happened. And
The EMF
it, it,
meters we couldn't keep those quiet. We had to turn them off all the time.
and people were touched. People were, I heard audible voices myself. You constantly seen shadows that were darker than dark. And the way this thing was set up, they set it up like a bed and breakfast, and our team would go in and ghost hunt with these people who were in the bed and breakfast. And I would say the basement was probably, for me, was the hottest spot in the whole house.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, you've seen shadows. That's where the white face was at. Do you remember the little girl that started crying because of the white face? Got it, jumped up pretty much in her face as well.
Oh yeah, she left.
Yeah, she's scared to death.
Yeah, and then we had that one fella. It was that group that come in from Hazard. There was like 8 or 9 of them, and the one guy ended up sleeping on the front porch that night. He wouldn't come back in the house.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there was. I mean, in the way that house was laid out, there was like 5 bedrooms upstairs,
Hmm.
and off of the stairway at the top of the stairs, there was what would have been a library, I guess, Joe.
Yeah, if you went to the top of the stairs and hung a left and went to the end of that hallway, it
Yeah,
was like yeah, it was kind of like a library, and the entire back wall was glass.
yeah. Well, that one night I had to leave early and I had to go to work. And of course, all the lights are out, everything, is out. And, I'm just carrying this little pin flashlight trying to get down these steps. And right before I put my foot on the first step to go down, I heard an audible voice, but it was very metallic. It wasn't, it didn't sound human. It was just very metallic. And it wasn't, it didn't have like an evil intonation to it. It didn't have anything scary about it. But all it said was hello. But man, when I heard that, I froze in my tracks. Like, wait a minute, did I really just hear that? And that was pretty creepy too.
That's amazing, man. I'd be scared to death too.
Well, and we were down in the basement, and I think I told this story too. It was me and Chad and Emily, and I think Joe was down there, and it was pitch black, and they had this table down there with wooden chairs, and the wooden chairs, when you slide those on concrete, they're really loud, and we were just, wasn't really even doing anything, just sitting there talking, and all of a sudden, on the opposite side of the table, man, this chair scooted, a good probably 7, 8 feet away from that table, and every one of us jumped and just you seen all these flashlights start kicking on, like what the heck was that? And that was pretty creepy. That was pretty creepy.
Well, they refurbished that house.
Yeah, it's in the historic district of Ashland, and what they were trying to do was to keep it a bed and breakfast and to serve alcohol and do a dinner and all that. And I guess they couldn't get any kind of approval from city council to get the liquor license and all that stuff. So I don't even know who owns it now, but either way, I mean, whoever stays in that house is going to get a surprise because there's no doubt that's one of the most haunted places I've ever been to.
Well, they had an investigation over last weekend or the weekend before last.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that.
Hmm. Yeah, Sammer's bunch went back in there again, and they did an investigation.
Oh, so she's still affiliated with that.
Apparently so, from what I can understand. I don't talk to her very much anymore. She's always gone on the road doing she's working, but yeah, they posted pictures last weekend, I think it was.
No joke. I
Yeah, that
had no
house.
idea.
Whoever ended up with that house, uh, they went in and completely redid the whole thing.
And I mean, you would just have to go into this house to understand just how beautiful this house was.
Oh yeah, it was nice.
Oh my gosh, the stairway, you go up about 7, 8 steps and then it goes to a level landing and then it turns to the right. Then you go up probably another 10 or 12 steps. Um, it's just absolutely beautiful. Beautiful home. All wood, everything in it's wood. I mean, just a beautiful house.
I'd camp out in that glass room up there upstairs. That was the that was my favorite room in the whole place.
Yeah, I ain't camping out nowhere up in that house. No, sir. No, sir. But we did another investigation um, in Grayson. I won't say where it's at because people are still using it, but it was in Grayson. Um, and I didn't really know much about the house, but afterwards, we'd go, we went into this one particular room and it just felt that, I don't know, man, it just felt heavy, like if there was a weight on you. And later, which I
That
didn't
was
know at the time, that somebody had committed suicide in that room.
that
And
was upstairs where we seen that real dark spot up there.
yeah, yeah. But if you remember, um, there was one particular right there at the stairway. There's a big window um, that you can't really even reach from the steps. And we were sitting there watching a shadow go back and forth across that wall to where there was no access there. You couldn't even reach it. You'd have to have a ladder to get on the steps to get to it to reach it. And we was watching a shadow go back and forth across that wall, which was really kind of weird.
That's creepy.
Yeah, and you could tell it was like a human figure, but it was a shadow, but you could see it jump plumb across the stairwell up onto the wall like Spider-Man. And it would go all over the wall and then it would jump back across the stairwell and into the darkness. You couldn't see it, but where the wall was white, you could see, even though it was dark in there, you could still see something, going across that wall back and forth, back, and then it would jump back across and it would be gone. So that was pretty creepy.
Definitely. So, who's your guys' favorite interview you did on your podcast?
Mm. I would say I like to talk to Don Neal, the guy with the KBRO.
Don
Love
was a good
Don.
one. Listen, Don is one of those interviews where you just throw a question out there, sit back, and let him go.
Yeah, he'd talk about uh, he would talk about tree knobs for 15 minutes straight.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you wouldn't even get it. Yeah, he'd just keep on going. He wouldn't stop. But Don is a great interview. We had Ken Gerhard on. Um, that was a really good interview that nobody got to hear. We had audio problems that night, and of course he's a big cryptid guy, especially Bigfoot, but he's especially in the cryptid field. And we did a 2 hour show with him, and the audio was so bad nobody got to hear it.
That sucks.
Oh, it was terrible. And one of uh, the Arizona thing, Joe, what was that?
Oh,
Kyle
that was Dr. Lynn Katai.
Katai, that's right.
She wrote the book,
Um,
The Phoenix Lights.
yeah, that was a good interview. That was a really good interview.
And I'm still in touch with her. I talk to her just every little bit.
And we
And
had some local, regulars on. We had Jimmy Haunted on quite a bit. Junebug was on quite a bit. Brock and Dave and there was several of them we had on pretty regular.
we
But
did, we investigated the McDavid house that was on the A&E network uh,
yes,
here in Grayson. We did that.
yes,
And our team was the original first investigators that did that house. And I don't exactly remember how it went, but the A&E network got a hold of it, and they brought what was his name? that Zach Baggins fella.
Right.
They brought his team in there and they discussed it, and they were prettier than we were, and so they put it on the A&E network.
Right. And that's where I think it was Chad. Um, it sounded like in the kitchen, it sounded like every glass in those cabinets broke at one time. But when you go in there and open the cabinets, the glasses were fine.
Yeah,
And you could see something go across the floor. A dark shadow would go across the floor. But yeah, that's I forgot about that one. Yeah. But that was but for me, Ken Gerhart was probably short of Don Neal. He was probably my favorite interview.
who was
That
the fellow that was from Ohio with was it that he was a UFO guy that we
was
did?
that with MUFON.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I'll let you tell that one.
that was. I think that was about the dry interview I ever did.
It was a rough one to get through. This guy, he was very good at, what he done other than doing interviews. And he was just so mundane and dry that I think that's when Joe said, of course we can communicate back and forth while these interviews are going on. And he sent me a message and said, "Did you just yawn?" And I said, "I don't know, did I?" He said, "I think you just yawned." I said, "I might have. I'm struggling over here."
That's the one that I was playing around with the Audacity program and making breaks for us, and we cut to break short, and I started playing the Real Men of Genius, the
Right.
like commercials from back in the '90s,
Yeah.
and
The Budweiser.
I was so eager to get away from that interview. I cut out early and went to those goofy breaks.
And if you remember, for me, one of the worst shows we ever did was the Philadelphia Experiment.
Oh, that was awful. It drug on
It was,
forever.
oh my gosh, and we ran out of stuff to talk about. I mean, we summed up the entire Philadelphia Experiment in 20 minutes, and we were doing a 2-hour show. And it was just like crickets, man. It's like, what do we do now? What do we do now? What do we do now? But I mean, it was a lot of fun. Um,
And
it's
there's a lot more into making a show than what people realize,
oh yeah,
because
the
you could go
research.
through the research is the thing. You can have 100 pages of stuff you're going to go over in just a 2 hour show. And if it goes smooth and you're not stumbling through it, you'll run through 100 pages of material in 30 minutes.
Yeah,
And
easy.
you got to have a lot of filler and whatnot in a show.
And that was a lot of the reason why we started putting breaks in the show.
Mm.
So, about every 15, 20 minutes, we could kind of get our bearings while these breaks were playing. And, if we were running out of materials, we would start banging on the computer going, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? What do you want to talk about now? We got 2 minutes to figure this out, because this break will be over in 2 minutes. So yeah, we there was times we were scrambling, but then there was other times that it flowed so just perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was only like a handful that we had issues with like that, but for the most part, that show ran really smooth. And we would do 2 or 3 days worth of prep work just for that 1 2 hour show, and it usually
Yeah.
worked out well.
Yeah. I would start looking at, we would usually right after the show, we would already have a topic for the next show. And that would give us about 6 days worth of time to do some research on whatever we wanted to talk about. And then there was a lot of shows that we didn't stick with one topic for the whole 2 hours. We would hit a topic for, 30 minutes and then we'd move on to a different topic. That way, the people who listening weren't getting burnt out on one particular thing.
Definitely.
But now the live broadcast, the remote broadcasts were the most fun.
Yeah, I think we were probably one of the first to do that. We had Dave come down all the way from Indiana and set this up to where we could do live broadcast, while we were doing investigations. And I mean, it was just as we were doing it, it was going out on the out on the air. So, in fact, I think, and I didn't hear this at all. Everybody else around us heard it, but me. We were doing a spirit box session, and there was about 10 or 12 of us sitting around this big, huge dining room table. And, people were asking questions, this, that, and the other. And apparently one of those, whatever come across there, said it was going to kill me. And I didn't hear it, but everybody else heard it. So, which I thought that was weird to begin with, because I'm generally, pretty good about keeping my ear to things like that. But I never heard those words come out of that box. But I guess everybody else did hear it. I don't know if you remember that, Joe.
I do remember that. I'll tell you somebody that's got some pretty good stuff going on right now. Do you remember a guy by the name of Stan Howard?
Absolutely.
He's got some good stuff going on right now. He's doing he'll go out to these cemeteries and he'll set up his radio equipment, and it's a ghost box and 2 or 3 other little things all hooked together, and he gets all kinds of voices and stuff back with it.
Yeah, because Stan had a show running the same time we did.
Yeah. But now he's still into it real big.
And then, of course, Jimmy.
Now, Jimmy
which
just
was kind of,
cool.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting at. He wrote this book, and which I still need my copy, Jimmy. I told him when all this went down, I wanted my signed copy, and I haven't got my signed copy yet. But he was on Coast to Coast, and he actually threw me and Joe a shout out, which was pretty cool, with Awakening Radio and the podcast we were doing. But we hadn't done it in a few years. But he still, was talking about our podcast on, a syndicated radio show, which was pretty cool.
That's big time, man. He's also co-hosting with Junebug on In Dark Places.
Yeah, you was telling me about that. Well, Joe and Jimmy got pretty tight there for a little bit.
I talk to Jimmy probably twice a week still.
Well, tell him I still want my damn book.
Shout out to Jimmy. He's a good dude.
So, but yeah, Joe and I, we've been around it a time or two, and we've had some good guests. We've had some mediocre guests, and we've had some terrible guests. It's just kind of one of them things. No matter how good or how bad they are, you just got to keep going and roll with it.
Yeah. Me and you've had one bad one.
That's true. Yeah.
I ain't gonna say no names though.
No, it probably wouldn't be good. But
you got to tell the story about when we were out west, and you seen the UFO out there flying along, and you couldn't wake me up.
That was the cigar shaped one, right? When I was trying to get you to wake up. So I think that was in New Mexico or South Texas, one or the other. And out in the distance, man, of course, you go out in the desert, you can see a long way. And I did see this silver metallic cigar shaped type thing, but it couldn't have been 100 feet off the ground. And when I first seen it, I kind of did a double take and I was like, what is that? And I don't want to say it was kind of following parallel with us but it was one of those things that it's like an airplane that's way up in the air. As you're moving, it looks like it's
Hmm.
moving with you. So I holler for Joe. He's asleep and I don't get anything. So I holler, I'm hollering 4 or 5, loud 4 or 5 times, get up here and look at this and see if I'm seeing what I'm seeing. Well, he never did get up. So eventually we went on past it and it, got out of sight. And I told him, I said, you ain't gonna believe what I saw over there. I said, I tried to wake you up. I said, it's a good thing I wasn't getting anal probed up here. I couldn't have counted on you to give me any help because he wouldn't wake up no matter what I did. So, but yeah, that to me, I don't know what that was, but it wasn't as distinct as the triangle that I saw over Albuquerque. That was a definite. I mean, there's no mistaking what that was. I mean, it was a triangle the size of Walmart floating over I-40 at 3 in the morning. Never made a sound. That's the crazy thing.
Now we
That was
seen
a
something
definite.
like that here.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My daughter got up one morning. She was going to school, and she had to walk to the top of the hill up here. But it was about a block from the house to get to where the bus picked them up. And she had been gone about 5 or 6 minutes, and she comes running back through the door. And I'm like, "Did you forget something?" She said, "Nope. You got to come out here and look at this." And I said, "What is it?" And she said, "I don't know what it is." And we went out the door, and by the time I got to the end of the driveway out here, I could see it, and it was like the big black triangle, but I could only see the tail end of it going over the hill. I didn't get out there quick enough, so I just seen barely just the end of it going over the hill, and it didn't make a sound. Don't know what it was. Now she said she seen the whole thing, and it scared her, and she started running back to the house to get me. And yeah, by the time I got out there, I could just see, like I said, it wasn't going very fast. It was going real slow.
Right.
And by the time I got out there, I just seen the tail end of it going over the hill. But yeah, it didn't make a sound, and that thing was huge.
I mean, yeah, it would look like Walmart in a triangle shape. I mean, it was that big.
Yeah, pretty good size.
And
Hmm.
it couldn't have been 300 feet off the ground, 200, 300 feet off the ground. And the thing that kept running through my mind, because I mean, it went straight across I-40. Um, Granted, there wasn't a lot of traffic out because it was early in the morning, but there was traffic out. And I kept thinking, I know I'm not the only person seeing this. And for days after that, after I saw that, I looked at Albuquerque newspapers, Albuquerque news stations, all this, trying to see if there was a report of anybody, saying anything about this thing, and nothing. Not a newspaper clipping, not a news report, nothing. It's like it never existed.
Well,
So
that's about like that time we was out in Road Forks, New Mexico, and I could have swore that was a zombie cowboy sitting in that TV room in that truck stop.
that's the old boy that died.
But then he raised up and looked at us. I was like, well, he's not
Yeah.
dead.
Well, I mean, that kind of segues into some trucking stories, but I mean, you know, we that was the place that looked like something out of a Tarantino movie.
Oh, it was from dusk till dawn. It'd be,
Us, I'm telling you, it
I was look, I was looking for Cheech Marin to be standing outside.
yeah, and it had a wrought iron fence around it with wrought iron gates. Everything was terracotta, like you would see in old Mexico. And we go into this room, which is, it's like a lounge. And this kid's laying on this couch. And this older Mexican guy is leaning up against the wall in a chair. And it's not a sombrero, but it's a big hat. And it's pulled down over his eyes. Well, I just, well, whatever, they're kind of camped out here for the night. So we leave and we come back through there probably about a week and a half later. And that same kid is still in the same clothes, in the same position on that couch, sound asleep, I think. And the older Mexican guy is leaned up against the wall, just like he was when I saw him, the week before. And he had this old hand rolled cigarette in his hand, and it looked like one of them chain smoking. Like his fingers were yellow and dirt, and I mean, you tell he worked hard. And I tapped him on the shoulder. Of course, he had his hat pulled over his eyes. And I tapped him on the shoulder, and he kind of raised his head up just enough for me to see one of his eyes. And I pointed at that kid. I said, I think that dude's dead. And he had that cigarette, and he kind of waved it around and mumbled something in Spanish. And I was like, "Oh, Joe, we got to go." uh,
Other than getting scared to death by the waitress back there, we left.
yeah, that was interesting. We went in and sat down, and she asked what I wanted to drink, and I told her just give me a Coke. She said, "We don't have pop, coffee, tea, water, or milk." And she said it just like that.
And
And I was like,
she sounded like Marge Shot.
yeah, like she'd smoked 6 packs a day for 20 years. And I kind of sunk down in my seat, and I was like, I think I'll have the tea. Oh man. We
Yeah, that place was full of zombies.
it really reminded you of something that was in a horror movie. It really did. But Seth and I were talking about this there a week or two ago. We're going up through the extraterrestrial highway up in Nevada, and all the weird things that people say they see up through there. Of course, you're heading out towards Area 51, um, up that way. Of course, you got the little alien restaurant up there and things like that. And I mean, I was on it a couple times, but I never saw anything out of the ordinary. But it gave you the vibe of like you was about to enter the twilight zone. Something was about to happen or could happen at any time. Like a little green alien dude run across the street, and you end up hitting him and have to stop. And it just
It's like
it
that,
gave you that
it's like that
vibe.
movie. Oh, the black mailbox is not there anymore.
Oh, it's not.
No, they took it out. It's not there anymore.
Ah,
It's
well, I
gone.
guess they decided that they weren't going to get any mail from outer space, I guess. So, but yeah, uh, we were coming across, where was it? I think it was I-20 in South Texas, and I was sound asleep. And Joe hollers up there and he says, "Hey, you need to come up here and look at this." I said, "Look at what?" He said, "You ain't never seen a wreck like we're fixing to see." And it was two Mexican trucks going down the interstate 80 mile an hour and bouncing off of each other, and they were cussing each other in Spanish on the CB. And it's he. You ain't never seen no wreck like we're fixing to see.
Yeah, they were side swapping each other.
Oh man! Now there's a road in Ohio. It's Route 666. And I've heard guys talk about seeing some weird stuff up that way. Um, but again, that's one of the few roads that I was never on. But it is up towards Salt Fork State Park, up that way, up Trimble County, I think is where it's at. And everybody knows what goes on up there, with the grass man and Bigfoot and stuff like that. So there's just a whole lot of weird stuff that goes on, really all over the country, but it seems like it's more centralized, especially in the desert. You get out Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah. Utah's a big one. Um, even in Western California, you hear all these reports of guys talking about where they saw this or they saw that. But yeah, the pinnacle for me was the Triangle in Albuquerque.
Well, it's the desert. There's nothing out there, so you know they
That's
don't have anything to do but bug the humans.
well, that I mean, you got the desert rats that live out there, and when I say that, that's not a derogatory. Derogatory. It's just people who live out in the desert, and you can always tell one because, I mean, their skin is just like leather, and they come into town once a week or once every couple of weeks, and they're basically off to gritters. But I mean, there's some weird cats out there.
Yeah. And lot lizards too.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a lot.
we don't want to talk about them.
Well, you know, I think that they're cracking down on them so bad that they're not like they were. Before, like I told you, you couldn't pull into a truck stop and they weren't beating on your truck before you got stopped. But now I think they're cracking down on them so hard that they're not nowhere near as bad as they were.
Well, they haul them in on a flatbed down here at Love's there in town.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, they got some big ton of funners down there.
Oh, big old girls, huh? Oh man, I don't know, man. We've done so much trucking. We were somewhere out in the desert, and I was kicking the sagebrush and started walking through the desert. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm gonna get me a picture of a rattlesnake," which was probably not smart. I was kicking that sagebrush, waiting to hear a rattle. That's gonna get me a picture of one.
Oh, we was at the right on the edge of the oh, I think it was in Utah. We was at the proving grounds, the military proving grounds, and I got that
That
picture. There was a sign on the fence. It says "No trespassing, lethal force."
that
Uh,
was at White Sands.
yeah, White Sands, New Mexico,
Yeah,
and you jumped the fence, and I got the picture of you on the other side of the fence.
yeah, leaning up against the do not. Yeah, you'll be shot. Probably wasn't smart.
I got
Um,
proof though.
yeah, yeah. I did jump the fence and lean up against it. It said, "No trespassing. Violators can and will be shot. Where use of deadly force or something like that." I probably just incriminated myself.
Nah, it's all right. Statute
I mean,
limitation over for that.
I mean, no, that wasn't me. That was Joe.
Hey, I already had the feds get a hold of me once and told me to hush on the radio.
Well, yeah, I forgot all about that till you just brought that up. So we're getting ready to do this show, and Joe says, "I'm gonna put something on the air." He said, "I can't tell you where I got it. I can't tell you who it is, but you're going to enjoy the crap out of it." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "I can't tell you. If I tell you, we're probably already on a watch list." And he said, just trust me." He said, "I'm not telling you that way. The less you know, the less they can beat out of you." And it was pretty much our military had scrambled F-16s, and Joe had the audio of these F-16s chasing a UFO. I still to this day don't know where he got it or who it is. And that was, 2016, 2017. I still have no clue how he even got it. But it was pretty incredible to listen to.
Yep. And then shortly after that, I was told to hush.
Well, we did a lot of that with the straw man too. We got some mysterious stuff going on, which I can talk about it now. I think it's went on. It's been so long now that I got a phone call one night, and when I
Hmm.
picked it up and answered it, it was the audio of Joe and I talking about straw man. And I mean, it was just really weird. There was nobody else on the phone. It was just our audio playing, which was, kind of weird that my phone actually rang. And when I picked it up, that this audio was playing. And then a few nights after that, ended up with some black SUVs going up and down my driveway. Um, so yeah, it's real. They're out there. They're listening. So just be careful is all I can say.
Oh, the conspiracy theory.
Well, remember, I've said this for years. It's only conspiracy till it's true.
Yep. Till you get a letter in the mail.
Saying shut up,
Yeah, hush.
you're being audited.
Yeah, that there is, such thing as the freedom of speech, but there's also a lot of consequences that come with that freedom of speech.
Listen, there's only freedom of speech as long as you agree with them. Once you have your own opinion, then your freedom of speech means nothing. And I heard a great quote just the other day that said, "I'm all for the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. The Second Amendment makes sure that we have the First Amendment."
Unless you're from Ruby Ridge.
So that's a whole nother ball game right there, brother.
Yeah,
That was Janet Reno's screw up.
that was a big thing where I got on a tear there for about 6 months. I kept saying the ATF needs to be disbanded because they're a
They
bunch of
still
trigger
do.
happy little kids.
They still do. And on top of that, the very same people that were at Ruby Ridge were at Waco when all that went bad. And again, Janet Reno had all her hand all over that.
Yeah, if they don't like you, they'll get rid of you.
Well, Randy Weaver got set up. There's no doubt about it, 100%. Um, over Ruby Ridge over a shotgun, and they ended up killing his son, his
Mhm.
wife, and I'm not real sure if they killed the baby or not. But there was
No,
another one shot that Randy Weaver was shot. Um, the other guy, I can't remember his name, was also shot.
and they killed the
And
dog too.
yeah, well, the one guy lived, but they ended up paying Randy Weaver millions over that. Millions. So basically, the government's the way they said it is, we're not saying we're wrong. We're just going to give you a bunch of money.
Yeah, now go away.
So, but he didn't go away. He wrote books, he did TV shows, he did interviews. He was all over anybody or anything that would listen to him. Because, yeah, he may have got millions, but he lost his wife, he lost a son, all because of the ATF overstepped their bounds.
Like I said, they're a bunch of trigger happy little kids.
Yeah, if you remembered, we would do little skits on the Awakening radio show that we did. And there was this one particular story where I think it was in California, and I don't know if it was ATF or if it was LAPD, I don't remember. But they were running through backyards looking for something, and this guy was watering his grass. You remember that, Joe?
That was LAPD.
And he turned around with a garden hose in his hand, and they shot and killed him because he
Yeah,
had a garden hose in his hand.
the guy that lived there was gone, and that was his best friend had come there to visit from out of town. And he said, "Well, I'm not going to be home." He said, "But here's where the key's at. Just go on in." And he said, "While you're there," he said, "step out back there and water that grass out in the backyard." He said, "And I'll be home later on this afternoon." And the fellow said, "Okay, that's fine." And a neighbor seen him out there watering that grass, and the neighbor called the cops. And when the cops got there, it was no questions asked. They went around that house and they seen him standing there, and they killed him.
Huh.
Yep, no questions asked.
Well, I guess they felt threatened with that water hose nozzle on that guy's hand. I mean,
They,
he could
they were
have got him
scared
soaking
for,
wet.
they were scared for their lives.
I don't, you know, police officers have a tough job. There's no doubt about that. I have no question about that whatsoever. They're put in very dangerous situations where they can be killed at any time. But at the same time, you that's the job you chose. And it is a very dangerous job, but you've got to be able to distinguish. And a lot of times, and that's me sitting here in a chair. I mean, I'm not in that position, but you got to know the difference between a gun and a garden hose. You know, um, and I've said this for years, and Joe will back me up on this. I do not think ex-military should be police officers. What's the military trained to do? Ask questions and kill. You know, um, I don't see adding more military to a police force making it safer. So, and it's nothing against the military at all. I'm grateful for our military, but to me, I see that as a bad outcome.
Well, it's a different skill set.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a big difference between a soldier and a police officer. There's a big difference in the skill set.
Right.
Now, there's no doubt in my mind if you take a civilian and train him how to be a police officer versus a soldier that's already been trained and just, once he gets out of the service and goes over into law enforcement, there's a big difference in those two people.
In the mindset. Yeah.
Right, right. So, the fellow that comes over from the military, he's going to bring his military training with him, which in a way, in a lot of things, that's good. But like you said, with the military, they're taught and they're trained to eliminate the threat, period.
Right. Right.
And a civilian is taught to assess the situation and talk the person down. And then if they can't do that, then eliminate the threat.
Right. And
Big
I know
difference.
every situation is different. I mean, you know, um,
And the
police
thing of it is,
officers.
and a lot of things nowadays, you can't tell what, like on a traffic stop, a lot, you can't tell what's going to happen on a traffic stop now.
No, because people do not fear the law.
No. I mean, I've seen videos of, fellas pulling over somebody. And as soon as they get to the window to get their driver's license and insurance, the regular stuff that they do, as soon as they ask for your ID, they get 15 rounds emptied into them
Yeah.
for no reason whatsoever. So, yeah, it sucks being a cop. That's a bad job.
Yeah. There's no way I'd do that job. There's
Me
just no
either,
way.
man. Did you guys hear about you remember the Paintsville CSX crash?
Oh, where the train hit the flying saucer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually did not happen. I've talked to a CSX employee that was there. It was all a hoax.
Is that right?
They
Yeah.
said that was sitting in a train yard for like 3 or 4 days in Paintsville, and then they come and got the engine, and yeah, it all just disappeared because Chad and Junebug went down there and walked that track and tried to find some stuff over, about it, and they never did find anything. And they talked to a few people, and nobody knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, it was all a prank.
No joke. Yeah. Junebug and them they were making a documentary or something about it, I think.
Yeah, they started to, and it never really went anywhere. But yeah, ah, that was a good story anyway.
Yeah, I actually talked to an employee that was there
No kidding.
on the train. It never happened. Yeah, I'm not gonna say no names because I promised I wouldn't. Trying to
Right.
get them on the podcast, but they won't do no podcasts. But
Right.
which I
Now,
can't blame
Joe,
them.
So what started that story in the first place?
It was a prank. That they was pulling.
You mean the railroad employees started it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they started that
so
out as a prank call on some other employees.
so Joe there's just below you down there in Grayson. Um, you and I and Dom were talking about this at one time where there was a lady who said that there was a Bigfoot that would come down and beat on the side of her trailer.
Oh, that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That was up it was up a holler called Blaine's Trace or Bell's Trace. It was up Willard. Yeah. Uh, they had logged that out up in there, all around those folks' trailer, and they logged all that out. And then shortly after they got done and the logging crew moved out of there, uh, the folks were at home one night and something started beating on the wall outside and scratched the trailer all up. And was making all kinds of racket, and they had a big Great Dane out there too. I mean, them three. Yeah, they had like three big Great Danes outside, and those big dogs, they hit the hills and they were gone. And that happened 3 or 4 nights for a couple of 3 weeks, something like that. So yeah, that was a true story there. That happened, and it tore the barn up, whatever it was, tore up the barn. So yeah, it got mad.
I guess it was credible enough that Don was going to come all the way from Western Kentucky to do some investigating.
Yeah, KBRO was going to come down and look at that.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Wow. Yeah, I couldn't remember all the details of that and where it was. I just knew it was south of you.
Oh, did they? Oh, well, apparently some people did come up there and investigate that.
Oh, didn't it?
I just now learned that.
Huh. And
My,
don't know what the findings were.
my nice and very sweet significant other, her mom and dad live up that holler, and she was just telling me just now that there was people that went up there and investigated that.
No joke. All right.
Yep. Yep.
I'd like to know who that was. I'd like to talk to them.
I wonder if Dawn would know.
I don't think
I
they had
don't know.
anything to do. It wasn't KVRO. It wasn't them that did it. It was somebody local.
And Don's he's getting kind of hard to get a hold of. He's kind of stepped back a little bit to I guess focus more on his preaching stuff versus the Bigfoot stuff. But he don't post much anymore on Bigfoot stuff or anything like that. He's kind of stepped back a little bit.
Well, it's been awful cold here recently.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
So they may get back out in. He was taking his wife with him quite a bit last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess they were making some pretty good outings with that. So, but I've said it and I've said it and I've said it. I think people are seeing something. I don't think it's all bears. I don't think it's all made up. I think people are seeing something. But what they're seeing, I don't know.
Well,
Definitely something.
where we used to live down in Louisa, we heard tree knocks down there quite a bit. Never did
Yeah,
see it.
because you
We
guys
never
were kind
did.
of out, wasn't you?
Oh yeah, we were 12 miles south of anything. There wasn't nothing around us. We was way out in the woods out there, and we had we heard tree knocks one night down over the hill down on the river down there, and then we had looked a few days later, and something had broke the trees off. Those trees were 8 or 9 inches through, something like that, and it broke those trees off about 10 foot up in the air. I don't know what it was. Never did see anything.
Uh,
You could hear it, just couldn't see it because it was all nighttime. And there's no night lights down there. It's just all woods.
right.
And well, you could hear the tree knocks and hear the brush rattling, and yeah, it didn't last long. Or well, she didn't hear it very long because it scared her and she ran in the house.
Had enough of that. I don't blame her.
Yeah,
I ain't sticking around either.
yeah.
I don't blame anybody that doesn't want to see or hear Bigfoot, man.
No, no.
Well, yeah,
It-
that's a good question. And this is the same thing I've asked uh, Bigfoot hunters and ghost investigators. This I've asked this same question, and it goes for both of them. What are you gonna do when you find them? You know what I mean?
Run. Nah, they're
It's like
super
it,
fast though. I don't know.
it's like that dog that chases the car down the road. 99% of the time, if you got a dog chasing your car and you stop the car, the dog quits chasing you. He don't know what to do at that point.
Yeah, yeah. And I've said it on ghost investigations before, and I have that thought has actually crossed my mind. I don't know how many times. Well, Joe, what are you gonna do if you do find something?
That's yeah,
Hey, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go out and get the car, and I'm going to the house.
Poke my pants.
yeah, no kidding. Yeah, had to stop by the dollar store and get some new pants.
Right there, yeah.
But
But
that's
anyway, I asked I asked Stan that same thing here a few weeks ago. He was out He was doing a live. He was doing a TikTok live, and he had his equipment all set up, and he was asking, how you do. You ask your questions, and you'll wait a few seconds for something to come over that ghost box.
right.
And anyway, I was just in the audience. I was watching, and I typed the question. And I said, Stan, what are you going to do if you do find something?
A lot of that's the reason why I quit doing it. I just,
Won't take no chances.
well, I mean, if you go looking for that and you find it, what happens when you can't get rid of it?
Yeah, it follows you to the house.
Yeah, I mean, and then what are you gonna do?
Well,
So,
the boss lady just told me you're sleeping outside.
well, I just the mystique had left me. I'd seen enough to know that this stuff is real, very real. I don't care if people believe me or not. I've seen things, I've heard things that I shouldn't have seen or heard, and there's just no doubt in my mind that this stuff is real. So, if these things or whatever, your spirits, ghosts, demons, whatever it is, if they can manipulate things and make sounds and touch things and make things move, at just whenever they want, and that gets attached to you, there's no peace in your life from that day on. And it's one of those things, if you don't go looking for trouble, most of the time you don't find trouble. So that's when I kind of stepped back and said, I don't care to do podcasts and talk about it, but
And I'm not going
I'm
to go
not
look.
going to look. No, I'm not going to go looking. Just not going to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm done with all that. But I do like to
Yeah.
talk about it. I'll talk about it all you want to, but I don't think I'm going to go looking.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care to talk about past experiences. And see, after a while, and you can vouch for this, Joe. After talking about it so much, you start beating a dead horse and talking about the same stuff over and over and over and over.
That's something I
And
don't understand how Art Bell did it for so many years.
well, I think Art had such a variety, though. He had people beating his door down to come and talk about their experiences. Where me and you pretty much had me and you, and every now and then a guest, because we didn't have a guest every week.
No, no, we probably had a
Um,
guest once a month, something like that.
yeah, probably pretty close. But one day he could have somebody on talking about demons. One day, or the next day it could be UFOs. The next day it could be how the Madagascar mosquito is screwing up something halfway around the world, or something going on in outer space with rockets or atmospheres or whatever. I mean, he's had such a variety of of what he did because people were beating his door down to get on his show. And to
Inter-
this day,
he was an
he's
interesting guy.
I say to this day, he's probably one of my biggest radio heroes.
You mean George Snorri's not your hero?
No, George ruined that show.
Talking about climate
George,
change.
yeah, I mean, and then that's fine to do, but that's the focus of everything he does is climate this, and it just I don't know, it's just very boring, very mundane. Where art wasn't boring.
I liked it when he had what was it called? Ghost to Ghost.
All around Halloween time, yeah.
Yeah, people calling and tell those ghost stories. That was always a good show.
That I always liked when Malachi Martin was on there. So, but that's about all I have for this evening, fellas.
Appreciate you guys being on and doing it, man.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
do it again those days.
thanks for
Absolutely,
coming
man.
on, Joe. Thanks for answering your phone at 1 in the morning.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't even have my ringer turned on. I just happened to see the screen light up, and I looked over and I thought, "Wow, what's he doing calling me this late at night?"
Hey, man, I definitely appreciate you answering and being on for sure.
Well, yeah, not a problem. I enjoyed
Definitely,
it.
man. I did too as well. I appreciate Tracy doing this every week. Appreciate Joe for being on.
Yes, sir.
Everybody have a good night and God bless.